everyone's got their own opinion on what is the absolute best decade in music. And Moses, from the looks of you, it's like what, 1865 or something?
It's hard to tell with him. The beard is long.
It wasn't even what Beethoven did at the time. It was how he did it.
Was Beethoven in 1865?
No, he wasn't. Also, I was more of a Schopenhauer.
Well, we're not going to be talking about those decades, Justin.
No. We're going to do something a little bit closer to home for us. I believe we're going to do the 60s to the 2010s.
Yes, we will only be able to keep the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, or 2010s. Only one of those, and everything else is gone from history.
I love that. Excuse me.
I had a question about
Excuse me. Go ahead with your question.
Is it 2000 to 2010 or the 2010? Like 2010?
It's 2000s, and then it's the 2010s.
Yeah, that's how decades work. They go in increments of 10.
Huh.
It's a confusing concept. Anyways, my name is Pedro. Very happy to be here. And before we get started, we do have, we've got a gift here, actually, from a secret admirer of the podcast. Apparently, his name is Ed. So I don't know how secret it is, but it's a bottle.
Anonymous.
It was mailed to us. Apparently, our job here is to drink it. So thank you, Justin. So we've got a bottle here. I've got some glasses being set up in front of me right now.
What kind of liquor is it?
We're all going to enjoy it. I'm about to say that.
This was the wrong day for me to be enjoying some drinks from Steve the bartender earlier.
Wrong day to quit sniffing glue, my friend. Well, what I have in my hands is an 80 proof Bird Dog jalapeno honey flavored whiskey.
Sounds delightful.
I'm sure that it does sound delightful, which is what I look for in a whiskey as well. I love the sound. And honestly, all of the other senses can go and suck a dick.
To quote Van Halen, I think we are headed for a whole lot of trouble.
Yeah, let's just see what happens here.
Because we took our whiskey home.
It's very viscous. I like this. Yeah, so right now we have the glasses being poured out.
Justin is being so kind as to pour these shots for us.
Honestly, I think that he's being rude to whoever meddles this bottle because we're barely putting a dent. But I assure you, we are going to.
That isn't maple syrup.
These here, Dan. If you can reach your hand out.
Well,
thank you.
There we are. Doing that right across the the recording laptop.
Yeah, but we didn't spill anything, so yeah, we're good. We're good. A lot of equipment here.
Yes.
So we're now about to try. Let me read it again.
What's it called?
It's Bird Dog jalapeno honey whiskey. They put it flavored in like tiny font, as if that wasn't obvious that it was just flavored.
So they could trick you into buying it.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I've just took a big whiff of it. It smells of nothing.
Yeah,
it's without fragrance.
Yeah, that's because
which is alarming.
Yeah,
that is actually weird. I just did that too.
It's almost like a fine oil.
I got a little. I got a little bit of a honey smell. Nope. So we're all going to cheers to this.
Hey, cheers
to music.
To music.
Yeah. Music.
To our anonymous benefactor, Ed.
Wow, God!
Wow,
that was unpleasant.
That is.
I didn't taste anything. Oh, I got a little heat.
Well, that's your neuropathy.
Yeah.
I got a little heat.
Now I'm picking up the honey.
The honey
is the aftertaste.
It's like
it's acrid.
Yeah. My jaw is sticking to the roof of my mouth kind of thing.
All right. Ed, you lovely bastard.
All right.
Lip smacking. There's a terrible.
Dan, get that in editing. We're doing one more to these, Justin. Yeah, that's right.
All right, let's while we're doing that, let's actually keep it moving here.
Oh, there was a topic.
Right? There is a topic. We have to pick one decade. The 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, and 2010.
Yeah.
So here's
huge.
Yeah, it does.
So here's where I'm at while you guys pour out that awful whiskey.
We like to punish ourselves.
Where's yours, Dan?
But thank you, Ed.
We love you, buddy.
Yeah,
I love you. But yeah,
I need to finish this gigantic little
Let
bit.
Dan
of a full
talk.
glass.
You do that in your own time.
So when I was thinking about this quandary, obviously I'm a big fan of. I've said it on the podcast before. Rush, Van Halen, a lot of bands that cross multiple decades. So one of the things, before we even get into this, that I wanted to bring up to you guys is making up the rules to this particular elimination game.
What are the rules?
Thank you. Would you consider the idea if you eliminate that particular decade, that if that band, let's just say, released its first album in that year, rather than like it formed, because like who really knows when half these bands fucking formed in the first place, when that band released its first album, if you eliminate that decade, so for example, if I eliminate the 1970s, I eliminate Rush, I eliminate Van Halen,
So,
I eliminate
my take on that
Aerosmith.
is that when you eliminate a decade, it just needs to be the songs that came out in that decade.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's so many bands that, like, changed over time that, I mean, the bottom line is that I don't think that would be fair. Because, I mean, like if you eliminate, like, a time period, then you get rid of, like, all of Michael Jackson's music. That seems ridiculous. I think that you eliminate that particular...
That's actually
yeah, because Michael Jackson wasn't as prominent as he was solo.
But that's also like, that's a good point, because where do we define this? If you eliminate the Jackson 5, you eliminate Michael Jackson?
Right,
from
yeah,
existing?
exactly. Yeah. I think that when you eliminate a decade, it should just be the music that existed in that decade. Otherwise, you get into like a fucking rabbit hole where like it expands upon itself.
So what I will also say for the rules for this as well, all of the influence. So like if you lose like the 1960s, the music of the 1970s still exists. Whatever influence they caught from the 60s, obviously every decade is influenced by the prior
predecessor
decade.
We would get too far into the weeds.
That we can't get wrapped up in that.
No, that's
Exactly.
string
Rock and
theory,
roll was invented by Back to the Future. I understand.
Chuck Berry or Marty McFly.
So now that we've all agreed, I would like to say I am stuck on two particular decades. Now, again, big Van Halen fan, big Rush fan. I actually there's a number of bands that like came out in the 70s in solo artists. Like I even like Bruce Springsteen's work in the 1970s. Like maybe once it gets to the 80s, it gets a little shitty. But
We're also the
Agreed.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
man, that was awful.
It went from 7 to 11
Yeah.
because
When brunch happens. Jesus Christ. Welcome to New Jersey, everybody.
Anywho,
but God damn it for me. Like all the music from the 70s, I particularly enjoy, but the 1980s, holy crap. I love so many freaking songs and albums and bands that freaking came out. Like
Shoop.
What's that?
Shoop.
No, not
and
that.
Pepper.
But like,
That's 90.
I'll give you like again. I'm a big I'm a big Rush fan. So like their work in the 70s is great, but their work in the 80s and like it's really hard for me to discern between like, oh wow, which one do I actually like more?
So outside perspective for Rush, for me, the meat of the prime rib is in the 80s.
Yeah,
for me.
Yeah, because that's where like
where they really came into their. They really learned themselves.
Yeah, that's where the casual listener knew.
Yeah,
which I am.
Rush. Yeah, because that's when Permanent Waves came out.
Exactly.
And so you got The Spirit of the Radio, you get Free Will, Moving Pictures, you get Tom Sawyer, Limelight, YYZ. You get all the freaking, what was it, 1982 when Subdivisions came out? Signals. When, and that's
Signals,
Subdivisions.
But realistically, though, can you name a band from the 80s that you like?
That debuted in the 80s.
Aha.
Oh my God, yeah.
There it is. All right.
No, if we're talking straightly,
Oh, I got jokes.
It's
Dan loves Rush, everybody.
if you're talking about like just the music from it, like I got into Genesis recently, and it's because
Genesis is
recently.
solid, though.
Genesis is fucking baller.
it's baller, but like I never really gave it like the time of day, just because I got wrapped up in my
It's
own
a
like
goddamn
musical
super
cocoon.
group that like passed itself off as like a regular band.
It wasn't a super group though. They all like debuted with that band.
Yeah,
like,
but
Peter-
it was a super group.
and, like
Just think about their hits, though. Africa, Take On Me.
that's
Wow.
Like, yeah.
Those are two
Don't you
different
be-
bands.
Everybody wants to rule the world? Come on.
That's a
don't
third
don't
band.
you be bad mouthing Toto, Tears for Fears.
Somebody
forget what
add
the second
him
one-
to the
was the
terrorists. Whatever list that is, he's on the
But
terrorist
the
list.
reason I got into Genesis now in 2024 is
Which
because
I
Tarzan.
love.
you motherfucker, you Pedro,
Well,
Wow.
Are you
I
Pedro?
feel very targeted
Being
right now.
dead named.
Yeah.
you. Well, first of all, that's how you introduced yourself in this podcast. So
my
don't you
name.
dare throw
Was
this
it
at
this
me.
one? I thought it was the other one.
No, he said the same one.
Yeah.
My name is Pedro. What the fuck to tell you?
Back a couple months, you were playing Ninja Sex Party, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna listen to this. And they have a number of cover albums.
They do.
And a couple of them,
Great band.
they had Genesis and Phil Collins songs.
Yeah.
And so for whatever reason, like I was listening to all these covers. I know that song, blah, blah, blah. But like the Genesis Phil Collins songs, I'm like, why is this?
Oh, this jalapeno honey is. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt that. It's
In the 80s.
It's like coating the inside of my mouth. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ed,
In the 80s.
not like this.
Let Dan finish. It's my bad for interrupting.
In the 80s, you couldn't turn on your radio without hearing Phil Collins in like 15 minutes.
Or the 90s. But the two songs, Don't Lose My Number and Misunderstanding, they were like,
They're fucking fantastic songs.
but I'm like, why does this strike a chord? I don't remember who sings these songs. And then I look it up and I'm like,
oh yeah.
oh, wow, Genesis. And then just from then on, I'm lost. I'm completely lost. And that band started in the late 60s.
Yeah, late 60s,
and went
yeah.
all the way to like 1997
Who
with an unfortunate
Who
album.
else was in Genesis? It was
Peter Gabriel was the
Peter
initial
Gabriel,
lead singer. And
Sledgehammer, if you don't remember his name.
that was not a Genesis song.
No, it was
No,
not.
that
Sledgehammer
was
was
a-
absolutely
it was a great song and a great video.
Yeah.
better video.
The drummer, and he wasn't even the initial drummer. They added him like a couple albums into their.
It's always
into
like
their
that
time
with the
frame.
drummers.
It's Phil Collins.
Yeah.
And
And he was singing too.
and
It was like
he was doing the backup vocals.
Yeah.
Yes.
Phil Collins sings?
Yeah.
Oh, who
Wow.
knew? Who knew?
There's a little movie I'd like you to watch called I believe it's Hercules.
What?
What?
Wow.
I think you're thinking of Tarzan.
Tarzan?
Yeah,
It's
Tarzan.
It is Tarzan.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's Tarzan.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
said that and then glared at me, which I didn't know how to react to.
It's okay, Moses. You'll be in the listener's heart. But like
Right.
going through all of I bring all of that because like I'm going through the Phil Collins era of Genesis and I'm going through the Peter Gabriel era of Genesis and I'm like,
yeah.
holy crap. Which one do I get rid of?
It's hard. It's hard.
It's a
They don't have a bad season.
You son of a bitch.
God damn it.
They did do the Van Halen thing where they brought in a third
Yes.
lead singer and it didn't
That was
go well.
later on.
Yeah, it was
man,
like,
when
yeah,
they
it was
were
the
like
late 90s.
grasping
It never
at
goes well
straws.
when you bring in a third. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I was like, that was a question probably for a different podcast. I'm like,
Yeah.
has anyone ever had a third singer? I'm like, yep, don't miss a beat.
No.
There's a number of bands that like second singer, don't miss a beat.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Iron Maiden, Van Halen,
Yes.
Genesis,
Yes.
number of bands. But like third singer,
Third? No.
doesn't work out for you.
God, I'm so sorry.
It is pretty rough.
This is terrible drinking this. I really I'm gonna finish this glass, but the
Yeah, I
burn
don't-
just hit me.
See-
As I was in the middle of that sentence.
The problem with the whiskey is that it's distracting you from actually like contemplating the question.
It is
so
so
sorry,
distracting.
Dan. It's
But,
just
yes, well-
terrible.
The question is, am I going to take another sip? And
You have to finish it.
yes.
That was the rule.
So if I could take the reins for a quick second, I'm not going to give my final answer, but so I'm a child of the 80s.
Yeah.
Tapping on the door of 40. This is where I'm at right now. Oh, wow. I just thought there was about to be vomit happening, but fortunately it didn't happen.
We-
Not from me, across the
We
table.
all did.
Yeah. This ain't no Shangri-La, Moses.
No. But I grew up a lot on what my father listened to before me.
Yeah, as did I.
So my father was a big, he had a big like LP collection, all these like hundreds and hundreds of records and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I largely grew up, even with all the stuff that I saw on MTV, like a lot of like Peter Gabriel and Genesis and all these things like that I loved on MTV. I was really growing up on a little too much Bruce Springsteen and a lot of 60s, 70s, and early 80s
Yeah.
music.
I was the same. I grew up in like 50s, 60s, 70s music.
If you
and-
lived in this state and you were born in the 80s essentially,
Yeah.
it was like mandatory, like they put it in your sea bag.
It was
like,
indoctrination.
It was like born in the USA, go straight into it. It's just like, listen, you know every song here.
I
You
al-
don't know why you know every song,
I
but you
also-
know every song.
I also got a lot of doo-wop and Motown.
Well,
Yeah, growing up.
also, if you had any connection to any Italian people, inescapable.
yeah.
Oh, my God. For days. For days.
Frankie Valli, all goddamn day. My mother
I'm
also
just rat
loves
pack,
Neil Diamond.
Yeah.
which I
So
enjoy too.
growing up, like my family's like whatever. They're like indiscriminate mixed white people.
Yeah.
Like Scandi and shit. But I have my Uncle Tony by marriage.
If
And
you live around here, you have
yeah.
Uncle Tony.
Yeah. And both my parents worked. I was a bit of a latchkey kid. So, like, I'd spend a bunch of time over at my aunt and uncle's house, and he was Italian. So, like, there you get a lot of the Frankie Valli. Definitely a lot of Sinatra.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But, like, you're not even considering those eras.
Yeah.
So,
Damn it.
I forgot about the story. I just remembered
but,
good stories.
like,
Me old fashioned.
I mean, I'll dip into it a little bit here and right now. And we'll obviously move past it, but I'm just going to come back to it. One of my favorite artists of all time has existed from the 60s up until he died in the early aughts, which is Ronnie James Dio.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's him with Rainbow, Black Sabbath, on his own, stepping in with other bands at different times. So, like, I'm even right now in this moment trying to figure out the era. Because it's going to be, for me, generally with him, but what's my favorite era?
Yeah. And that's where I'm stuck with that, too, because if I eliminate, let's say I eliminate the 70s.
Yeah.
And I keep the 80s. That's great because I have a wide swath of Rush and I have like the Genesis era, which is pretty much Phil Collins, but it's more mainstream Rush. I mean, excuse me, Genesis.
Yeah.
And then I have like 1984 from Van Halen.
Mhm.
I have like pretty much all of Van Hagar, which is I actually appreciate
Of
that.
course,
that-
no, I
that
appreciate it too.
I can appreciate Van Hagar.
But then I don't have Rush when they're in their most proggy.
Yeah.
And I don't have
Yeah.
Van Halen 1.
Right.
And then I don't have like, oh, good, I get Born in the USA, but I lose like the good Bruce Springsteen era. I lose like, it's not a big deal with me, but like the 1970s to me, they had like the mainstream 1970s music was just so fucking peak. You lose so many good songs from the 70s. And I heard somebody, Dr. Drew
Yes.
Pinsky. He fucking said in an interview, I don't know what the hell this band is like. Somebody like, oh, wow, we got good music in the 70s. Like, yeah, not really. Look into it. And I'm like, what the? Do you have eardrums? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
First and foremost, fuck Dr. Drew.
Yeah.
This is Love Lines, Dr. Drew.
Yeah. Adam Carolla's bitch.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. He gets passed between Adam Carolla and Joe Rogan, and then
Joe Rogan's got dibs on that?
yeah,
He's got the other pocket.
He's been hitting it.
He's got that other
Actually,
pocket.
I think he belongs to the market of Tom Segura and Christina Pazitsky now. I think he's on
So he gets around.
their podcast group at the moment.
For myself, I view it in the general style of music, so I'm hard-pressed to actually really lean on a particular band name for this. I'm struggling right now. That said, I lean very much so towards like the 60s, 70s, and I feel like that the style of music then, because I like funk and jazz and things like that. Basically like black people music of the time.
Yes.
That in so many ways were instrumental towards the music that came
Of
out
making
afterwards.
rock and roll.
Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like making
so, like,
it.
I love the Isley Brothers, right?
Yeah.
And the Isley Brothers is where fucking Tupac and Biggie came from.
More or less,
Like, straight up, if you listen to their music, it's 100% just.
Well, they
Isley
do a
Brothers.
lot of samples and shit.
That's all that it is.
Yeah.
Both of them just did Isley Brothers.
I think,
and then they put a fucking lyrics to it.
Wu-Tang did that too. Like a lot of their samples are like 60s, 70s mixed in with that kung fu.
It's what those
other thing,
people
but-
grew up listening to.
and that's what influenced them. But I think what we can do to kind of like make this a little bit more concise, but also like flesh it out is let's steelman each decade.
Yeah.
Because in the 1960s, it's exactly what you're talking about. So much influence went into that decade.
Yeah.
Like without the 1960s, now we aren't factoring that in so much, but like you're talking about like, Motown.
Yeah.
You're talking about like good old fashioned R&B.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, the Yardbirds.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
You have the Yardbirds. You also have the Pointer Sisters.
Yeah.
And it's like
Holy
those are like two
Name
opposite ends of the fucking spectrum, and they are both fucking phenomenal.
This is the decade where music becomes what it would become.
Yeah.
Like, because in like the 50s and prior, it's all big band.
It was
all
a
like,
quintessential, the 60s, the 70s, these were quintessential turning points.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Realistically, if you look at
Absolutely.
it within the phenomena that happened like post World War II America, it's that you had this 1950s era, you still had like whatever you want to call it, but for my own verbiage, like you have like this little bit of an apartheid America. You still have this like desperation to keep people separate, black people, white people, what the fuck ever, doesn't matter. And then as you emerge from that, that's where you see this blending of the genres, essentially. Yeah. You see how like white people took on black people music. You see how black people changed this. And then you see how they also coalesce together, how little by little. And then eventually, sadly, you end up with like new metal. Yeah. And you've got, fucking Fred Durst, just bastardized the whole thing.
Before we start going after the 2000s and 2010s, we should probably Steelman those. But so we talked a big game about the 70s and 80s, but I think also at the same time, like the 70s kind of honed what the 60s did and kind of made it, in my opinion, like perfected the 60s sound.
The 60s were the kindling.
Yeah.
The kindling.
The 60s was a tumultuous period, so you got a very raw feel.
You get,
and then I would agree with you.
The 70s bring the soul from the 60s.
It kept the vibe, but it honed it. Yeah. Because you were emerging from the Vietnam War, and now you didn't have that same angst.
You had a lot of incredibly experimental stuff going on. You had all these different offshoots coming from that kind of like collective collection from the 60s into the 70s. You had a lot of shit that failed. Yeah. But you had a lot of shit that was like proto.
You start getting
like proto metal. You had proto
metal. Yeah. Like you start getting the subgenres, which actually became genres in their own right.
And then in the 80s, I feel like the 80s get dunked on a lot because it's just like, oh, well, nothing really mattered and it was all about partying. But that's what where the country was kind of at the time, because so much was going into like the protest music of the 60s and like it was carried over to the 70s where everyone was just like, yeah, Poison said it, but everyone just wanted to have a good fucking time.
I can't remember who said it. I saw it at some point, but like when you get into like that mid 80s, it's like everybody was doing rock, blah, blah. And then like a Christmas came and everybody got synths for Christmas. Somewhere around the mid 80s. And it was just like, that's what, especially with like your Phil Collins stuff. Like that.
There's a notable tonal shift, and a lot of that had to do with the culmination of the Cold War. Once again, all correlated to like the history of it. But ultimately, you had a definite like vibe shift that happened at some point in the 1980s, and I like to call that the power of love.
Yeah, and also you also had first wave punk happening, like late 70s into the 80s, like 78, 79.
You also had thrash metal that was really coming into
Fuck yeah. But like, and honestly, even thrash metal, that goes back very much so to the 70s.
Yeah, it does, but it like really came into the forefront. Grunge also came to the forefront.
It became stylish to have it at that
point. Grunge was kind of an offshoot of that punk kind of vibe, and then
a lot of it derived from late 50s fucking surf rock.
A lot of it,
yeah, because now that we try to go like over, like now I know we're really like skipping ahead because you could go, we could do an entire podcast about just, the 80s and 70s in terms of music. It would just be like that. But like if we jump over to the 90s, it was kind of like you go from we want to have a good time in the 80s now to like regressing, regressing is kind of like
regressing,
but like we're going
it's all about we're not having a good time.
We're going back to the means of the 70s. We're going back to like, all right, now we're protesting again. Now we're angry against like the authority, like we were in the 60s and 70s. And you get bands like Pearl Jam. Yeah. You get bands that are just like, oh no,
we're not going to do anything about it, but we're upset.
Yeah, we're
gonna fought Ticketmaster.
Yeah,
you did. I did not do it, and you did it.
And what they ended up losing, winning? I forget what happened.
Nothing really ever happened. Yeah, but Ticketmaster is still allowed. And now we have StubHub, which is like a worse Ticketmaster.
Yeah, that's what you get.
Yeah.
The nail that stands up gets hammered
Too
down.
Close to the sun.
But the concept of the 90s that I will at least try to steelman in the best possible way, it was a return from lighthearted, potentially monogamous bullshit.
Yeah.
Where everything was a tragedy.
Yeah. Where everything was just like cocaine, blowjobs, and having a good time.
I am way on board with this.
Well, that's why the 80s music was great.
What decade is this?
But also, like, it wasn't like
I set my time machine to wrong.
But like, but 90s is kind of like, listen, you can still get cocaine and blowjobs.
Yeah,
but everything's not great.
They're on. It's not so much cocaine as it is heroin, and the blowjobs are very unenthusiastic.
Fentanyl and the blowjobs are toothy. I agree with you.
Listen, we still haven't even gotten to the 2000s.
Oh, it gets worse.
But like, all right, so I very much remember I was born in the mid 80s. Not that I remember that, but like my dad always tells me this story. Like when I was a kid, like young, what is it like? Something like an Egyptian, whatever.
Well, like an Egyptian.
I
forget.
I guess when I was like a
Bangles, I
toddler,
think it is,
I would like do that in like the backseat. That's a funny story for him to tell. Much to my chagrin.
It's a funnier story for you to tell.
Yeah,
It made me think of what was that animated cat where it was like straight up not tell me? It was an animated cat for real.
That did what?
That dance, I don't know, fucking dance around. I don't know, it just reminded me of that. No, it was its own music video.
MC Scat Cat.
MC Scat Cat.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, two steps forward.
Yeah, exactly.
And 2
I
steps.
don't know why you're raising your fucking eyebrow at me when you absolutely know.
Well, because I can't see your fucking eyes, so I can't see into your soul to get your memories.
Thank fucking God.
But also, as you were like something that you mentioned before, in the 90s is when hip hop and rap really took over the mainstream as well.
Yeah, for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
But they were all built off of what preceded, because it was all like all of those artists that basically emerged during that time period. Obviously, it became mainstream because it, like obviously the cultural aspect of it, white people, black people, all the things that were unfolding at the time, things that were in the news. Rap, basically became a thing at that time for its own reasons. But it was built off of what those people...
Yeah, there was bass rap in the late 70s.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a base of rap, of what rap actually
Exactly, yeah.
And it started to catch legs in the 80s, and then in the 90s is when it really took over.
Yeah,
that's
what's
when
his name, Justin? Gil Scott Heron?
It was the 70s.
Yeah. No, it was 60s even, yeah.
I think it was late 60s.
Yeah, he basically did it was like spoken word. Spoken word poetry.
And that was popular in the 90s.
He's considered to be like a godfather of modern rap music, and that originated.
Well, he's a poet. He's a modern day poet.
Yeah, it's spoken word. It borrows
spoken word. It lended into like the wordsmithing, all that stuff like that.
And then so you had this over these like basically 2 decades, and then you went from Gil Scott Heron, and you went over to fucking Biggie Smalls. Who was using the Isley Brothers, fucking tongues.
But even before that, there was
there was an evolution. I agree with that.
But you just even fucking Run DMC and the fuck are the names?
Run DMC was later than that. Yeah. Well,
Run DMC
not later than Biggie.
No,
like 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 80s, 90s.
Run DMC was
Run DMC was 80s, but before Biggie.
Yeah. Gil Scott though was like
Gil Scott was before all that, but
yeah. That's what I mean. It was a gradual evolution.
Well,
and
because they were behind
Run,
the black ball, really, like for lack of a better term.
Yeah. I don't know when did Run actually originate? Because I don't know the answer to that.
Early 80s, maybe
they were
70s, I think.
Yeah, they were like at the dawn of
they were. Yeah. They were like just doing street things, like they weren't signed, I imagine, but like doing house shows and
shit. You had Gil Scott, who basically did spoken word, and it wasn't,
and he was at the forefront of like media at the time to as good of a degree as he could be.
Well, yeah, it's like I play that shit sometimes, like you have a jukebox at the bar. And I'll put on Gil Scott
the revolution
sometimes.
will not be
Revolution will not be televised. Not even my favorite song by him. But I put that shit on, and it's funny if you want to make like white people cringe at these podunk bars that I like going to. That's a great way to do it.
Well, some of them were playing Sanford and Sons that I've been to with you.
That was
it was
really
like
weird.
fucking bizarre.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So to answer the question of when Run DMC originated, it was 1983. Their first album was in 1984.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I guess everybody's on the money.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess we were because we were all right and wrong in different ways.
Well, the 80s is when rap really started to take hold, and in the 90s you see that shift from rock to rap.
Because then gangsta rap became a thing.
Yeah, and a lot of that just goes back to that if you were black, weren't allowed to make black people music for a long period of time. But then it all happened so rapidly.
But Will Smith does it like all the goddamn time.
Will Smith is the least black man ever. And please call in. I would love to defend that. Moses, fight with me.
Beastie Boys are blacker than Will Smith.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you.
Moses, you should, get a part-time job so you can help pay for school supplies.
Say, what? Yeah. Yo, Dan, get Moses'
I would take it seriously if it was coming from Carlton or Jeffrey.
His Carlton dance is legit, though.
Nah, no. Dude was on Silver Spoons. He knows his white people.
Oh, Silver Spoons.
Remember that?
You remember when we were watching that?
All right. Let's not get too far off the beaten path here. What I will say for the 2000s, and you guys can correct me if I am mistaken. So now hip-hop rap is completely dominant now in terms of the musical landscape and is
beginning to dominate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's taken taken hold at that point.
Like today or at that time?
No, like the 2000s.
2000.
In the 2000s, that's when we're getting our
it's-
best Eminem.
Yeah. I
But,
think
like,
I think that was like where we were seeing the transition.
Yeah.
if
Well,
may
I think the
offer that.
90s is when it started, the
90s
transition. Like, 'cause you could see, like,
Yeah.
Pearl Jam. Like, Pearl Jam, it was, like, one of the last bands to actually, like, be, like, a top fucking echelon rock band. And then, like, the hip-hop, rap,
and then everybody
craze
began to
took
mimic
over.
it.
Yeah.
Let's also not forget, like, one of my least favorite things ever, new metal.
Oh, yeah, I was just
Came
talking
in the
about
Well,
90s.
Yeah.
remember, we're trying to steel man that decade.
I know. I can't
See,
ignore it.
I'm
It exists, and I hate it.
Well, what I was going to say about the 2000s was that much in the same way as the 80s did.
Yeah.
This is where rap and hip hop go into that, like, oh, it's all like,
let's mix.
let's like
Like
all
Aerosmith and Run DMC.
But let's mix, but also let's all just have a good time. Because a lot of the mainstream, at least hip hop songs and rap
Judgment Night.
songs, are all just about, like, doing blow and getting blowjobs and having a good time.
It's all the poppy side of
Yeah.
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 I mean, I'll say this. I'm going to bring it back. I'm not trying to be too political about it, but I think that like a big element of that is
It's hard to
that-
ignore.
Yeah.
It's hard to ignore it, and I think the reality of it is that if you were like a black musician
Mhm.
at the time, then what you're really trying to talk about, like obviously we all like if you're an artist, if you fancy yourself that way, then you're going to try and talk about things that are relevant to you. You're going to try and talk to your community, whatever
How
that
do
is.
you how do you create something not knowing about it?
Well, as far as the music goes,
Well,
Also-
just like if you're an artist, you're just creating
As a
something
quick
in some
point,
way.
the floundering proto punk, like post like Iggy and shit like that, but in New York, they were coming up with the early rap guys, the New York rap guys, and they were sharing the same stages, and it was kind of cool if you were there for like the Cowhouse days and stuff like that,
Right,
early
right.
CBGB stuff.
I think that the bottom line is that when you talk about like the content of the music that was coming out of that time period, if you were a young black person who was like basically you never knew that you were going to have this following, this fandom, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, the bottom line is that yeah, you can sing about whatever you want. If you sing about the wrong things, then you're not going to get heard because you're going to get shut down,
Yeah.
which is still true today
Yeah.
for anybody.
but
if you're a member of a boy band and you sing about something serious, you're probably not going to get very
we
far.
did skip over boy bands.
Well,
Like, what's
well,
the-
give me a
like,
moment.
But again,
like
trying
at the same point, like
me.
there was NWA, like
yeah.
the name of that band.
Sure.
Yeah, like, but they were a big fucking rap group
Yeah.
at the time. Like, and that's using.
And we're talking about what, 1982?
Around there.
yeah, 2
Yeah.
to 4,
Something like that.
something like that, and then they split up. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but still on their own. Most of them on their own.
What I'm saying
like,
is that
did
there
well.
was a transitional period, and everybody can capitalize on a given moment and get what they can out of it. But it wouldn't have worked if everybody was NWA.
Oh,
In other words, that
Well, if they're like
there
they
needs to-
were.
there needs to be an easing into it. We were I mean, like, let's be realistic.
Yeah, but that
about-
was a big, like, granted, they didn't get radio play,
Yeah.
but unless it was like Hot 97, like the early morning.
Well, let's go with 1982 then. So you're talking about a time period which is what, like 25 years after Black people got rights.
most of
Like,
them.
yeah, so I mean, like
Most of them.
it's a pretty close thing. Like literally, your parents know this different time period, and you grew up in it, and probably still are experiencing it to that very day. So I think that it's something that's very difficult for us to understand in a personal manner. And
That's
so we're
fair,
always looking
yeah.
at it as a third party and trying to rationalize and justify.
How
it.
can I associate with this?
Yeah, exactly. Because I realistically, like, I know that I can't, like I was born in 1985. So really, it doesn't, like, for the most part, I was born like in a fucking like regular town in New Jersey. Like, is there like a little bit of this or that or whatever, like things that make you feel like you're shut out? Yeah, sure. That exists everywhere. But did I grow up in like 1950s fucking Kansas City as a black man? No, I fucking didn't. I have no
Well, also-
idea.
But
that
also
is
the
like-
music that you were talking about, neither did they.
Right, no, that's fair. But I'm saying, but they grew
Also,
up.
get off my lawn.
Sarah, I will piss where I want. And what I'm saying is that they grew up with that influence. That's my point. you
That's
know?
fair.
They grew up with that influence. It's very real to you when you knew somebody who experienced that, and that's your lessons, and that's how you learn. And it's also how, like, a lot of my musical influence, like in terms of what I like to listen to, a lot of it was borrowed from my parents, in weird ways because I'm like a weird mutt. But even still, like, a lot of it came from that. You know, so I think that had an enormous influence in that
No, I
regard.
get that because I know a lot of my Neil Diamond love is because of my mother.
Yeah, we're always influenced by it, you know. So I think that
But
that's a big part of it.
Not going to sit down and listen to like like I know she doesn't like the Grateful Dead, and she like that's in her fucking wheel. Like she kind of grew up with them too.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and it's
like they were new when she she's heard them newer than you know.
Yeah, I think that we're like enormously influenced by these things, but just like with anything else in life, we like pick and choose, and you know, by means that I don't fully understand myself. But like we pick and choose the parts of it that we want to like make a part of ourselves over time.
I think we just go against
in
what
many
we
ways,
know, like what we already see.
Yeah.
That way we can pretend like at least give ourselves the self-satisfaction of being different, even though we're not.
Well, yeah, actually, yeah, it's a very deep statement. Actually.
Yeah, we're getting a little deep here.
Yeah, I actually do agree with him. Yeah, that's fair.
Also, NWA 1987.
Yep.
There you are.
Yep.
So
straight out of
ain't nothing to
Compton.
fuck with.
I actually
motherfucker.
here is where I need your guys' help. I don't know how to Steelman the 2010s. I don't know how to Steelman the 2010s in terms of the musical output.
Hilariously, having lived through it, I don't know.
Was that when we get Juggalos?
Yeah.
No, Juggalos are actually even before 2010s.
All right.
For the 2010s, I can only think of bands that existed in like the 2000s that maybe
That
got
carried
better,
through.
that carried through.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift.
That's
Well,
I said Steelman.
Steelman. Yeah.
I did not mean like reasons why I wanted to eliminate it immediately.
Lady Gaga, I guess.
Who came out? Yeah, who I don't know. I'm too old.
That's
for
what
that.
I'm. Bruno Mars.
All right. From my perspective,
What about Childish Gambino?
shut the fuck up. No, there's nothing wrong with Childish Gambino. But like for me, there was literally a point in time where I just stopped listening to new music.
That's fair.
Yeah,
I
It
think
was
that's-
1999.
For me,
me.
no. For me, I actually had a resurgence in the early 2000s when satellite radio came out.
yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
Because I got satellite radio and I got introduced to a whole new bunch of bands, depending on the station I was listening to. Now, none of them really carry with me today, but I was exposed to new music.
Yeah.
That's when I first heard Gogol.
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
Oh, Gogo Bordello.
Yeah, and I was like, and I'm all about that
Yeah.
fucking band.
Yeah, you look like you should be in that band.
I might be in that band.
You
You should probably
actually
start wearing purple.
Yeah.
Is he not? Is that not purple?
Well, I haven't taken my pants off.
Gross.
However, that being said, I only hung with satellite radio for maybe like 3 or 4 years. And then like I was like, why am I paying for this?
Yeah.
So that probably led into around the 2010 era. And like there is very few people I have listened to that are new post that. Like, and this is gonna be hilarious for me to say this, but it was a person that existed post that, like Wheeler Walker Jr. And he's a joke artist.
Yeah.
But like I don't listen to like new.
Pretty good.
So I'll actually, and I'm just exploring this thought right now in my own mind. So I do listen to new music,
Yeah.
right, via Spotify and such like that. I'm blessed with like friends who are more than a decade younger than myself. My dear friend Isaiah
Yes.
introduces me to like new fucking.
He is a
rap
very
music.
good
Yeah, he's very
catalyst.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and he
A
knows
good
what the
source
fuck-
of new information.
Yeah, and he's not giving me bullshit. He's an intelligent person. So he gives me like the real shit. So like I'm blessed in that way. But what I will say, because I'm like listening to what you have to say about it, and like I absolutely stopped exploring on my own at a certain age. And now I'm pondering in my own mind, is that a standard? Is that a thing that happens? Because of course we all know this trope of
I
like
think to a
that I'm
degree-
settled in my ways, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I will say that while I don't find myself attached to new bands, right? So like the bands that I can name for you are bands that I enjoyed when I was a child, right?
Yeah.
So like I can ring those off, you know, and they might be from times before I was born, you know, again, Isley Brothers, or it might be
But,
Third Eye Blind. which I
Yeah. So
actually
you had
grew
their whole
up with.
collection
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
in either regard.
But at the same time, when I listen to music today, so I do like still do this a little bit of exploring, I do find music that I very much so love. So I am exposed and I don't find attachment to them. That's the thing. I don't find myself saying like for example, like Justin, you might have to correct me on this. I'll just use it as a random example, but every now and again, like I enjoy listening to like alt country music.
Yes.
So like Lost Dog Street Band. I remember their name. That's why I'm using them as the example. But basically, I only enjoy their individual songs. I have no fanfare about them. I can't go.
You just
beyond
like what they do, not like their whole
Yeah,
persona.
I'm not a fanboy about it, you know. Whereas when I go back to when I was a youth, I might say like, oh man, I fucking love Biggie, or I love fucking Third Eye Blind, or I love whatever the fuck I love. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't find myself attached in that way. And I think that's perhaps like getting older, getting perhaps a bit
What
jaded.
I would say for a quick interstitial is that the only person that's giving me new shit to listen to on like an individual song basis is you.
Oh yeah.
So like,
And I'm
whatever-
getting it from Zay.
no, no, but no, and I understand that, but like, I'm getting it by proxy.
Right, exactly.
Through
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
When we take those long drives,
Yeah.
whatever we do.
I don't have my finger on the pulse anymore, but I do love to explore. And I don't remember like the name of the band or anything because that's not relevant. It's just, it's often just like the one,
Yeah, the one song.
you know?
And yeah, but
and then if I hear like another one and another one, if we get to 3 songs that I love from you, I'll be like, oh shit, let me actually like bring you up, you know, and like listen to what the fuck
never
you're doing.
learn the name of a song. Always learn the name of a band.
I
Because
was
then you could
literally
find
just
the
saying
song.
opposite.
Because
but
then
fair
you
enough.
could find a song because it could be a cover that you like
I
that
don't
you've
care if
never
it's a
heard.
cover.
Yeah, but you might like it, but like always learn the name of the band because you could look up that song and you're gonna find a bunch of
I don't have the
people.
memory for that, Moses.
Oh, that's you gotta steel your nerves.
No.
All right, so let's also get into the cons
Yeah.
of these decades
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like the 2010s, I think this is like it's fast food music for a
Yeah.
large part, like especially like the mainstream, like what you would if you're driving around listening to the radio, you're not getting anything of any substance. I feel like that's kind of a
Large-
universal
all right,
thing that we
so
all.
for me, like where I really kind of turned off, like the mass music of say like the early aughts, like that emo
Mhm.
like shit. I was never really into, but you were just blasted with it nonstop.
What like the what emo are we talking?
All the emo.
Yeah. I'm not sure how you want him to answer.
You
Well,
want you
like-
want
like,
like
are
a
we talking The
deciphering of
Cure?
emo?
Are we
No,
like
no,
the
no, no,
Cure
no,
band?
no,
Or
I- I-
or
I-
the
I-
My Chemical Romance?
My Chemical
kind of-
Romance,
My
the
Chemical
Hard
Romance.
Way.
Oh, they're
all that-
different kinds
Black
of emo.
Parade.
Yeah.
Yes, but the Cure is a different era altogether.
Yeah. That's literally the 70s, I think.
Yeah.
The Black Parade.
All right. So like I grew up with like, and then definitely so I came out of high school in the early 2000s. Like emo was really king. A little post that you had like the American Idiot era of Green Day.
Yeah, the sellout version of
We
Green
could
Day.
do an entire podcast of how much I fucking hate that goddamn album.
Yeah, no.
American Idiot.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
Christina,
my God, Dan,
my-
listen,
my-
just wake me up when September ends.
oh my God, shut the fuck up.
That went out
my
to Dan.
lovely wife.
Thank you for your
Wake me up when
service.
when you're done talking and let Justin speak.
my lovely wife. So she went. My lovely wife is like the smartest, most studious lady ever. So she studies for concerts.
Yeah.
So like her and her brother were gonna go to see Green Day. So she was not very fluent in Green Day. So she studied Green Day
Yeah.
before
Did her homework.
did her homework, like literally from like the very early days through Dookie to like American Idiot and beyond to current.
I love your wife's neuroticism.
Oh, it's crazy.
It's, like,
and I love her for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean that as a I mean
Yeah.
that as a genuine compliment. Sometimes when you know somebody who's insane, it makes you feel more sane.
Yeah.
Anyways, continue.
I will very much, in the same way, share that I mimic that neuroses.
Yeah.
Because even bands that I love, like if I was going to a Rush show,
Yes.
I'll wait for them to stop.
Yeah.
If I was going to like, let's say,
Everybody's doing.
if I was going to a Rush show, and I'm like, even though I know all of their songs, let me study up real quick.
Yeah.
So like when I'm at the show, I know what the fuck is happening.
Yeah.
So I'm not thrown for a loop.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank God you don't have a control disorder.
Yeah, no.
Imagine what that would be like.
Thank
So
God.
even last night, my wife and her brother and some of the cousins, they went to Philly to see Blues Traveler,
Oh,
Last
yeah,
night.
Yeah.
I saw that.
which I got.
Jealous.
I have X amount of love for Blues Traveler.
I do too. They're the rich man's Hootie and the Blowfish.
I've never heard it that way,
But
but
just a better Hootie and the Blowfish. John Popper is blacker than
Darius Rucker.
Darius-
I agree. I agree. That's why I said it that way.
Oh God, you're not wrong.
It's 100% the truth. That's the joke.
The only thing that John Popper did wrong was he lost all the weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is sad. A black man would have just fucking made it look good.
Yeah, oh, I mean, Terry Strucker
But-
ain't.
But,
No, he ain't.
but like I remember Blues Traveler, like
Because the hook brings you back. I get it.
oh shut the
Guys.
fuck up, Dan. Just take it.
I was just gonna say, like, let him talk. All right, so we're getting a little long in the tooth
All right, so
here.
we
in terms
gotta
of-
get into
We
what
actually got to make like a decision here.
Yeah.
So like, let me flesh out what I'm thinking here.
Yes.
All right. So immediately I could throw away the 2010s because it's all fast food music.
Mhm.
2000s, it's faux angst. It's like it's trying to piggyback off of the angst of the 1990s. The 90s are like a top contender, but to me, the 90s, and Moses, if you want to chime in on this take, by all means, the 90s to me is just a poor man's 70s.
Wow.
That's kind of fair. That is kind of fair.
In a lot of ways, yes. And there is points to attack, but I do see what you're saying.
And I had the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I was fighting in my head with which one of those. And then I was like, oh, wait, the 90s. And I'm like,
Yeah.
But I do like there's a lot more in the 70s that I like than the 90s. So I'm getting rid of the 90s because they're kind of the same.
Yeah, because it's like, if you can only keep one, the 70s and the 90s are kind of the same.
Yeah.
So like you immediately, obviously
They're
there's
just different skins.
Yeah, it's just pretty much like the same tone, but like the music is a little different. But there's like, it goes back to being more guitar based. Like I'm thinking rock music. So
It's where like everything's calming down.
Yeah.
Like the lull before the next big storm.
Yeah. And so, yeah, if I have to get rid of one of those two, then I get rid of the 90s instead of the 70s.
Yeah, because the 70s are more influential and a lot of more better bands.
Yeah. And then, all right, let me skip ahead to now the 60s. Now, there are a lot of bands in the 60s that I like. The issue with the 60s is, like, while I enjoy the music from the 60s, I don't think it's as honed as it is in the 70s. Now, you could also say, like, well, the 60s is better than the 80s. Here's the problem. I'm an 80s kid. Grew up listening to this shit.
Yeah.
There's something about a synthesizer, keyboards, that it just hits me.
I needed music.
We got tracked down in that year that everybody got a synth for Christmas.
Yeah, it's
1984 for me.
So it's between those two decades.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, the more I think about it, even while we've been talking about it, it's got to be the 70s. It's got to be the 70s for me, just because I can keep probably the best parts of the bands that I like. Now, I might lose like peak Rush, at least in the mainstream idea. I might lose peak Genesis to somebody who just really likes Phil Collins. I might lose. My favorite Bruce Springsteen album is Nebraska. That came out in 1980 or 81 or something like that.
Did he have an album called Nebraska?
Yeah,
why?
Don't. It's not worth digging into.
Yeah, don't dig into it. It's just like it's
aggravating.
It is just. It's an all acoustic album, and it's all about like murdering people.
Yes, it is.
So it's a memoir.
But and also too, like even the mainstream music of the 70s, like Led Zeppelin and all that stuff. It's just, like, I don't have any kind of like anything to poke at it and be like, let me get rid of that, as opposed to like the 80s where you're like, I like stupid pop 80s songs, but they're bubblegum. There's no substance there.
Yeah. When you're done, can I take my turn after you?
Oh, yeah, you can.
When you're done.
Pretty much that's it. I think because of, now, I like the fast food era of the 1980s. I like the, wow, that was aggressive.
I don't even know what that was.
Yeah.
I like the synthesizer. I like the keyboards of the 1980s. To me, it's good. It's fun. It's a nice, like, pick me up from the music of the 70s. But there's so much more. There's also so much more musicianship in the 1970s for, like, the bands like Led Zeppelin, Rush, and Genesis, where they're just like beating the shit out of their instruments.
Yeah. Now I've thought about it this entire episode, and then like it was really kind of going back and forth, and I think I've really fully landed on it. And like I had a hard point. So like here's how I'm gonna start this off. One of my favorite artists of all times is Ronnie James Dio.
Yeah.
Now, he's been in it since the Vegas Kings in the late 60s. All the way through floating around, forming a super group in the 70s with Richie Blackmore of Deep Purple. That's Rainbow.
Yep.
Then in 80, getting with after Ozzy, Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
And then doing his own thing through until he died in like when did he die?
2008?
Yeah, early 2000s. 2006, 2008. 2008, I think.
Yeah.
And with all that considered, and like everything around that, I think, I don't think, I know I'm going with the 70s.
2010.
Oh, all right, 2010. I know I'm going with the 70s. It's my favorite era of his, where I think he was the most adventurous.
Yeah.
Because, Rainbow was a super group, essentially. Him and Richie Blackmore from Deep Purple. Dio had been doing his thing with the Vegas Kings and being solo, going through a bunch of different bands and stuff like that. And, like, I just love the experimental aspect of that.
Yeah.
Rainbow post-Dio is garbage. And a lot of Dio post-Rainbow is also garbage.
That's fair.
I could say it
That's
too.
fair.
I don't know if it's the same thing with you, Justin.
Yeah.
If you gave me a time machine, I know we did a podcast about having a time machine potentially. I would just want to go see rock shows in the 70s.
Absolutely.
It would
Yeah.
just seem like it would be an absolute, like,
It's a fun time.
It would be a fun time. It would be a shit show, but you would absolutely be in your freaking element.
Yes.
It would be fucking awesome.
You got the tail end of the acid, but the just beginnings of the
I'd go
cocaine.
back to the mid-60s.
That makes sense.
That's
I
fair.
would probably do that too because of the LSD, the hallucinogens at the time. But
Yeah. If I could finish my
Yeah,
statement.
sorry.
No. I'm still sticking with the 70s because you have proto-punk, you got the Stooges, and all these things that are coming off of out of the East Coast, the CBGB days, the Cowhouse days, a lot of proto-rap, like East Coast rap,
Yeah.
is coming from that same situation, like 78, 79, 80. So that's what I'm thinking. 70s, particularly late 70s, but
Yeah.
that's where I am landing my anchor on that pick.
Who's next?
who is next? Is it me or Pedro?
Pedro.
That's you.
I'm gonna go with the 60s. Is what I would. That would be my cross to die on right there. Reason being is that I think that the greatest artistry comes out of the most tumultuous periods, and I think that of the decades that we're discussing, the 60s certainly bore that. I think that so much of the great music came out during that time. I think the inventiveness, the ingenuity, I think that it really originated there. I think that times of calamity for human beings, they create the best artistry. So I think that time period basically led into all of these other decades that we're discussing. So it's not even to say that I think the 70s are less or the 80s are less or the 90s are less, though I do have those opinions as well. Instead, I think that this time period was the originator for all of those other time periods. I think that basically the 60s was the most inventive. It was the most creative. And I think that, if I had a time machine and I went back to that time period, I think it would be the most interesting of them. Also, there would be a plethora of LSD. It was fun. And overall, I think I would just have a good time with it. That's my vote.
Very good.
1960s.
Moses, last man on the docket.
There's a lot to take into this. because
Honestly, this is probably the hardest question for him.
I told
it
you,
is the hardest. This is the
He was
third-
alive for all of these decades.
This is
The man
third
never dies.
hardest question.
his problem is he takes it suppository style.
Oh my God! Every day.
Well, do you want to wait around for your high, or do you want it now?
Well, no, I think he was talking about like the way in which your time machine works, and that it's a suppository.
Oh, well, that's just for comfort.
They don't call you King Butt Chugger for no reason.
It's true.
It's
That name still makes me uncomfortable.
good.
Go
All right.
Go ahead.
Moses,
Go
stop
ahead.
stalling.
Anywho, I'm stalling. I was debating because I love the 90s just because it's a fun, depressing time.
That's
Yeah,
a way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's
it was a fun, depressing
kind
time.
of
Like,
fair.
but and I was thinking about rolling the 70s and the 90s out altogether because they're kind of the same.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have to go with the 70s.
Mm.
I was also thinking 60s for the Dead.
Yeah.
But I got the Dead in the 70s, but I also got Parliament Funkadelic.
You did.
So I get the funk and the jam. And that's how you make a sandwich.
Listen, I fully back you on this, but the way you said it is so bananas.
You never had a funk jam sandwich? I know you have. I could see through your glasses.
I met that motherfucker. Were you there?
No, it was me and you that met
That's
that
right. I was gonna say,
motherfucker.
I don't know if he was telling a fucking joke or not.
Oh, that's right. You guys met
Yeah, it's
George
George
Clinton.
Yeah, I was for a second.
Oh, I wasn't there.
I
No,
thought you were like trying to like.
No,
imply that you were there.
that and Danny Trejo. I am like super envious
Oh,
of.
Danny Trejo was baller. Yeah.
Can
That
we
guy's
just do a
so
quick
dope.
aside, just because it was brought up? Pedro and I were working an event at the Stone Pony where P-Funk and George Clinton was playing.
Baller.
And we were at a little
fun.
2 foot by 6-foot table,
Yeah.
selling T-shirts 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And P-Funk is up doing their thing. They're a jam band. They just play.
Yeah, it was just
and,
jam.
yeah. And George Clinton is walking through the crowd, unrecognized by these young.
How he looks like Dr. Teeth from the Muppet Show.
Stands out. Yeah. He walked
Like,
up and I was like, oh shit, this is happening.
He is Dr. Teeth from the Muppet Show. They're the same. Have you ever seen them in the same room?
Nobody gave him any mind at all. Pedro and I are sitting at our table next to the shitty food outlet, whatever kitchen they call it, in the old Stove Pony.
Well, now it's Bubba Coos.
Yeah, yes, that is correct.
It is.
And sad.
Well, we saw
But-
yesterday. It was that.
Yeah. And George Clinton came up and like looked at our stuff and like interacted briefly and then went along. And then because he eventually had to go on stage.
Yeah.
And then he sent like his handler, I guess.
His posse.
peon, whatever.
Yeah. And she's like, in this size,
The
we would
funky
like
size.
every shirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, granted, this didn't work out how we had planned. She's like, oh, he'll take pictures of them. And we were all super
that's
stoked.
awesome.
We never got the pictures.
Oh,
in the end.
oh, man.
That's fine though. I'm so
But
excited for
they
it.
paid for all the.
As long as they
2X,
paid, like, who
3X
gives a
shirts
shit?
that we
that's
had.
a cool story.
Yeah.
But yeah, he came up and he was like, he didn't say much, but he was like,
Did you guys
Man, I
know
really
it
like
was
your
him?
shit.
Like,
Yeah. He just said like basic. He was just like, I love what you're doing. It was
Did
like
you
a
know
little
it was
I
him
like
at
your
the
shit.
time?
I
Like,
knew.
were you like-
He knew.
Yeah.
We,
Were you
we
like-
both knew who
Well,
the
were
fuck
you-
he
well,
was.
no, because I met Cal Penn doing
oh, yeah,
like
yeah,
the same
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I had no idea until like I read the
You
credit
cannot-
card machine.
Oh
The,
yeah.
the reason I said that he was able to walk through the crowd without being recognized is because of my anger from
Yeah.
that night.
Yeah.
Like P-Funk is P-Funk. They're up there to jam, and you got like 14 people up
Yeah.
there. And George
Yeah.
Clinton with his rainbow braids.
He's
well,
like
not braid,
three
the
of those
dreads,
14 people.
Is
Yeah.
meandering through the crowd,
Nobody
and nobody's looking at him.
Yeah.
He gets to walk up by himself to our
They're all
merch
there to
table.
just drink
He
fucking
is-
Pabst and do nothing else.
He is like because he is a ostentatious person.
Yes, but also you got
And he's physically very identifiable.
he's
also
huge.
the only black guy in this fucking Stone Pony.
Not for nothing. That's true. I was the next blackest man after him.
That is
and that ain't saying much.
That is absolutely true
it's
because
sadly
because that's a white band.
but like I think it was such a young crowd at this
Which
show.
is a little weird too, but they were just
But
recently
also,
in
here's the
PCU.
thing: P-Funk had been on for like 45 minutes.
So you heard.
So
a
these
song.
people that don't know anything, they're just like, oh, this is
This is the whole
this
thing.
is what it is. And we're in Asbury Park. We got this eccentric giant black dude with
Yeah.
rainbow dreads.
He was 2
walking through
seconds
the
away
crowd.
from getting arrested. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
He's pretty tall, and
I'd say he's probably like 6'1", 6'2". He's not like super,
Yeah, a
super
small
tall.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's a big dude.
yeah, well, no, I know he's
dude.
a big dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, the pony.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like he's lucky he was allowed to step foot into that fucking area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I-
Bruce don't like that.
Wrong side of the railroad tracks, friend.
This is no fucking. He was just walking around with impunity.
Yeah.
No one even looking.
Nobody
at him.
even fucking knows.
That's-
Everybody's just
bizarre.
watching P-Funk on stage,
Yeah.
thinking that's the fucking show. And then he just walks up to it, and it's just like, holy shit, you're George fucking Clinton. Like, oh,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I was totally like gushing a little bit.
I was falling apart.
That's yeah. I was
then,
like,
like,
this
he-
is cool. This
like,
is the
he-
coolest fucking guy ever.
Yeah.
Like he didn't buy anything at that point, but it was just like, man, I really like your stuff. It was
Yeah,
cool because
yeah.
he's originally from Jersey.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And then it was later when his handler came, and she's like, one of all
Want
your
it all.
designs in this, your
Nice.
the 2X or 3X or whatever it was. And then we talked, it was like, oh yeah, well, we exchanged an email address, there'd be pictures taken, and like, we never got those pictures. But like, whatever.
Listen, cocaine's a hell of a
You can't just feel the funk. You have to be about the funk.
That's true. Well,
But
but
it was
about the funk, though.
But like, it was fucking
That's pretty neat,
awesome
though, yeah.
and bizarre that like we had George Clinton standing across the 2-foot plastic table from us. And he's like, I like your shit, man. That's fucking
And all
That's
those
cool.
fucking people paid to be there, supposedly, to see him.
Yeah, and they
Know
don't
who the
even know
fuck
what he
was.
looks like.
Oh, it's fucking absurd.
it was
God damn
so bizarre.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's hit last call here. And I would like to say before I forget too, thank you to Ed for bringing us this.
Yeah, and fuck you.
This
Yeah, did we finish? Did we like? I still have pancakes
still
here.
have a
I need
little
that
bit
syrup.
left. All right,
This
let me
bird
just
dog-
finish. Dan, I'm gonna finish it if I may.
you can finish it all you want.
Is anybody else? You guys are all done.
I
Mine's
drank it.
empty.
I drank it all.
All right, I'm
Yeah.
done. Here I go.
You behind?
Thank you to Ed for
Catch up.
bringing this bird dog
Oh,
jalapeno. There you go.
Oh,
And I was worried people wouldn't be able to see the reaction. You could feel it. You can feel it in your soul.
I could taste it.
that was
over
oh
here.
my god, I still feel it.
It's a lingerer.
That was so painful. I'm still, Dan, I'm hurting.
We should have known better as soon as we saw Bird Dog on the
Yeah.
label.
I have Pedro's heartburn.
I'm
right
gonna
now.
need some cuddles after that.
So thank you to Ed for delivering this jalapeno honey concoction to our doorstep. Didn't
Love you, you fucking bastard.
It like lingers at like your upper teeth.
Is it gone?
I don't even know how to describe. Oh god, I'm like salivating.
Is there more?
now. It's so unpleasant. Is there more? Yes, there's a.
You wanna drink some more?
Let's do this.
Pedro, you know what isn't unpleasant?
Where's your cup?
Ending this podcast.
Way to
For it.
way to really step on my transition. It's not that. It's subscribing to this podcast, and it's also leaving us a 5-star review. You can also check us out on YouTube and Rumble. Make sure that you like, comment, share, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our content. Moses, you are pointing at me right now.
This better be
Dan,
important.
I just want to remind you about www.louddrunk.com
Wow.
so you can get at me.
Yeah, you can also check out the podcast there. There's also plenty of cool merch, glassware that, listen, when we actually do get video.
One of the greatest
We're
things about
drinking out of
videos, you
this
can
glass.
see the cool merch that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should all be wearing it, but also, where's our glassware? We got to have that too.
I
But we're-
email-
When we're
we
enjoying
will.
our
I do
delicious
love
drinks.
that. What's that one side where it's like if you're not
If it ain't loud and drunk, it ain't American. I should be rocking that
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
podcast.
yeah. And it's also like it's
That should be a
shockingly
hashtag.
accurate. It really is. If you think about it, if it's not loud and drunk, it's not American.
Not American.
Yeah. I think that about 7 billion people would agree with that.
Can we just do like a support consumerism, loud and drunk?
But we can do whatever you want, babe. Shut the fuck up.
We'll figure it out in time.
Well, also, you can follow us on social media. We are at Loud and Drunk on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the Tickety Talk. If you enjoyed this episode, slip us a bribe at patreon.com/loud and drunk. There are levels. Justin knows those. I'm not quite sure, but all of them will cost less than you pay for a beer at your local bar.
There are 2 levels that are definitely lower than the cost of a beer.
Yeah.
So
Does a beer
$50 now?
cost?
that largely, in my experience, like $6 to $7 now.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. You gotta get like Miller Lights at happy hour.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap today when I went.
It's like $3.
Yeah, but you
It's not
don't
bad.
drink beer.
Oh,
There is a level lower than that.
It's
You drink
$3.
liquor.
Yeah. Gotta slum it.
But also, I do want to reemphasize loudanddrunk.com. It's
Yes.
our home base. You should
Yes.
go there for podcasts, merch, and because
And
Moses,
me. I'm looking for your calls.
your calls or emails. Did you give out a
We
phone
have not
number?
given out a phone number.
It's all Google Meets.
867-5309.
See, he knows it.
So, for Justin, Moses, and Pedro, I'm Dan, and until next time, Moses, don't you lose my number,
Dan, keep on rocking in the free world.
Aw.
because you're not anywhere that I can't find you.
I ruined it.